Hi, I'm David LaTouche. So far we've talked about a lot of different painting techniques, working with acrylics, working with spray paints, working with metal patinas. And all of these are useful techniques and we use them all the time in finishing our mounts. But there's one type of surface that paints really can't do justice to. And that is polished silver with its shiny reflective surface. No matter how closely we can match our paint colors to the object, paints always fail at imitating the actual shine of polished metal. And in that case, our mount, however carefully we've located it, painted it, shaped it, still looks different from the surface of the object it's on. And that will draw the viewer's eye and draw attention to the mount, and that's something we don't want to do. So I'm going to talk about tinning. It's not actually tinning, it's what it is flooding the surface of the mount with silver solder, which you can then buff to a shine and get that reflective quality so it's not so attractive to the eye when the viewer looks at a polished silver piece. Here's a silver tray from a friend's pantry, and it has a mount holding it up. The mount is only painted, and if you look at it you can see how there's no shine, and even though a lot of work went into matching the color, it really doesn't match, and you can really notice it when you glance at the thing. It stands out because it lacks that shine. When you're actually going to tin a piece, you have to before you actually get to it, you have to make sure you've assembled the piece properly. The tab has to be soldered onto the mount with either medium or hard solder. And the reason for that is that you're going to be flooding this area with heat as you do the tinning. And you run the risk of the joint failing if you put too much heat on it. So use medium or hard solder for that joint. And then when the tab has been shaped to your satisfaction, you want to get it as smooth as possible. And you can do that with sandpaper, going up to 600 grit. You can even put it on a buffing wheel if you want, because the smoother it is, the more easily the solder will flow. In this case, I've gone to about 600 grit sandpaper, and then I just cleaned it with a gray scrubby, which is a pretty fine one. So it should be ready for me to solder now. So I put it on the bench and take a lot of flux, because we're really going to flood this with flux. And I get it all over the surface, and I'll come in closer for this to show you what I mean. And I also want to have it on the edges as well. Those can often be forgotten. So I have a lot of flux on it all over there. Put it on the bench. Take a nice large torch. And it's not a super hot flame, it's just a big puffy flame. So I'm just going to float it around here. So there's now a good deal of solder on it, but it hasn't flowed completely. There are a couple of spots that I want to pull the solder over to, so I'm concentrating the heat at those points. We'll take a look and see how this looks. After the sanding, I realized there's still some high and low spots. Back to the soldering. First, I just heat the whole thing up generally And then I start playing around the edges and underneath to be sure that the entire thing is heated and the solder will flow nicely. The solder's not moving to the heat where I want, so I'm going to grab a solder pick and push it over physically. So it's roughly tinned, roughly soldered, but as I go over it, I can feel that there's a couple of high spots. And since a high spot implies there's a lot of solder, I can safely file it without getting through to the brass underneath. That's it. And then 360 grit. What I'm trying to do is to even it out and get rid of any little low spots in there, because when I buff it up, those will show as dark areas, and I want it all to be smooth and shiny. And there were a couple of low spots over on this side. This is a Velvet cloth. Jewelers use it to polish silver. It's in every jeweler's toolkit, and it's in ours as well for just this purpose, because without a buffing wheel you can still get a pretty good shine on. This also helps to even things up. And it really points up the low spots where they are. But it also helps to get rid of them. So here are the two tabs. Here's the one I had initially done before I showed you, and then this is the one that I just soldered up. You can see that they have more shine than paint does. The problem is that the yellow brass underneath the silver gives it a very slight greenish cast, which is also noticeable. But I think the fact of it having the shine of the silver sort of outweighs the fact that you can't get the color quite perfect because of the yellow underneath it. Which brings to mind another painting solution that Mayor LaTouche uses. When she's making mounts for objects that are gold, we use golden colors or whatever, acrylics we have that are gold. But before she puts the gold paint down, she'll paint the tabs with red oxide. And then she'll paint the gold paint over that, which is essentially what happens when a gilder lays down his sheets of gold. And that brings forth the color of the gold in a way that might not work so well when it's over the brass. So that's it for tinning a mount. You get the surface of the tab as smooth as possible. You put on a lot of flux, spreading it all over evenly. Heat it with a big soft flame so it all sort of melts off together. And just before the flux is all gone, you add a lot of solder. Then using the same flame, you try and pull the solder to all portions of the tab so it's completely covered. And then you improve it by taking a close look at it and filing away bumps and being sure that there are no divots in it. And then you polish it up and you're done. The other method that can do the same thing is to have in your toolkit a little bit of actual silver. quarter inch by 1/16 inch silver, about an inch, inch and a quarter, inch and a half long, would cost about $4, which means that the cost of a single tab would be, in materials, would be about $4. And then you have real silver, and you can polish it up to a shine as fast as you want. Good luck. Hope it works for you. Bye-bye.